Hello again, everyone, and welcome to a rather long-awaited and much-anticipated episode of the Rural Excerpt. Today's episode is going to be on the partially abandoned Georgia Marble Company Nelson plant. I know it's been a while in the making, and I was trying my best to get some more footage of some of the other buildings on site that were possibly abandoned by way of permission of the current owner, but that never happened. And I was also trying to get some more history of the site as well as some history of the Georgia Marble Company in general and when and how it started. I was able to get a couple of scans of pictures of how the site looked back in the early days from the archives of the Marble Museum in the Nelson City Hall, which you'll see coming up very shortly. But that's about all I was able to get, so I finally decided to go with what I had, keeping in mind that this wasn't really a documentary on the history of the Georgia Marble Company or the Nelson plant specifically, but rather a video of the place as it stands now, partially abandoned, and that's what I'm documenting. Keeping in mind that I never trespassed into the building but rather stayed outside the walls and only took pictures and video through open windows in the front, holes in the side and back of what's left of the building with only two walls still standing and no roof, as you'll see. If you do know some of the history of the Georgia Marble Company or the Nelson plant specifically, please feel free to add it in the comments below. Now with that being said, let's get into the video. This marble sign sat in front of what used to be the drafting office for Georgia Marble, an old company house that was converted into office space for their drafting department. These were the photos I was talking about earlier. This one is of all the employees at the time in front of what used to be the plant building that sat on this side. This one is of the inside of the plant with some of the stone cutters in the foreground with all the stone cutting tools and equipment in the background. The marble sign again for the Nelson office, and scanning around to the actual site where the converted house stood that was used for the drafting office where my wife Teresa worked back in the early 2000s. It used to sit right there in the foreground in that field right there, right over towards just to the right of that paving that you can see right at the bottom left hand corner of the screen. That house there stood back there behind the other house that was converted into the office. It actually sat further this way where the office used to sit. It actually used to have a basement there, so it was all filled in at one time. Now we're looking across the street from the parking lot of that office and looking at one of the sides that was still standing from the old building. This side and the front side facing the railroad tracks are really the only two walls that are still standing. There was another wall on the inside that you can't see right now that I think was torn down or fell down on its own, and then the back wall is completely gone, as well as the roof is completely gone as well. Now we're down here looking down the railroad tracks looking north. And this is what I find surprising, that we actually have the railroad that goes right through the middle of the plant like this. You have the plant that sits on both sides with structures for an overhead crane that goes over the actual main line of the railroad. And I know that I'm sure that they loaded and unloaded pieces of marble off of the train that was pulled here, but I can't hardly imagine that they did it off of the main line. I would have thought that they would have had a sideline, that a side rail that would have went someplace else other than right there. Now we're looking on the inside through some of the windows on the front, looking towards the back of the building right there. As you can see, there's still structure still standing for the overhead cranes that used to be there. Of course, the cranes themselves are completely gone. There's a smaller one that's over to the left right there towards that brick wall. As you can see, that's a smaller one, but then you have another one that is over here straight back that I'm standing right between. And part of that structure on the left side must have been torn down at one time, because it doesn't look like all of it's still standing. Now we're looking through a hole in the side from the side over there at that street where I was looking at it from across the road from the office. And there's part of the track for the overhead crane that goes along the back. This is the L-shaped part that goes on back that way, and as you can see, the crane itself is still across the tracks right there. I'm zooming in on right there, so it's actually still there, although I'm sure it's not being used but nothing at this time. And this is just another look back towards the front corner right here, and the smaller crane over there, and that crane is actually still there as well. But from right there where that track ends, it looks like it probably went on back further towards the back end of the building at one time, and part of that may be torn down. Now we're looking at it from the back side, almost up at the corner, the back corner, looking across there through all the weeds and the brush that's grown up there now. And as you can see very well, that the roof is completely gone. See, that building came pretty much this far back at one time. That back wall and then that side wall over there, over to where the L shape was, or maybe it was more of a T-shaped, I should say. It may have been actually a T-shaped building, and it came back, went across, and then went back up, and then went across towards the right over there. As you can see from the perch on the back side of the building where I'm at now, there's several piles of scrap metal laying around on the plant floor, but I would discourage anyone who's even thinking about breaking into the place, even to steal scrap metal, not to do it. Remember, this is private property, and I'm only here to take pictures and video, and to leave only footprints, and this is only to preserve the memory of the place as it stood at the time of filming. And getting one last shot of that track that goes along that wall for part of the overhead crane, but part of the other track on the right side is looks like gone. Got out of focus there a little bit, sorry about that. This brings us to the end of another episode of the Rural Excerpt. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the partially abandoned Georgia Marble Company Nelson plant. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up. And for more similar content, please consider subscribing to my channel. If there's other abandoned places you'd like me to explore and film, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I will try my best to get to them for future episodes. Thanks for watching, everyone. God bless and keep you safe, and I'll see you in my next episode.